Yeah, they're the beginning of the gardens. They go for long, long ways. 30 minutes of walking just to get about 2/3 of the way into them. I'm just starting right now, but this gives you an idea. These fountains, most of the fountains only operated when Louis XIV was walking by them. Except for the Fountain of Apollo way down there. That was operated all the time for the benefit of the people looking out of the palace. Okay, here's the pan. This is it. You can imagine that center fountain right in front of us when that puppy cranks up. Probably has about 30 mini fountains in it. Who knows what kind of water was shooting out of the rest of the pond. Now you gotta think, this is one of the most grandiose things in the world, but look at the price. Every one of those statues carved for the pleasure of the king. That whole lake created for the pleasure of the king. All the trees way out there. All for the pleasure of the king. Now the story is when this goddess got insulted by the local peasants somewhere, she had Zeus come down and turn all the peasants into frogs and lizards. There we go. And turtles apparently, because a bunch of those too. And each one of them represents a fountain. So you can imagine what this would be like when it's playing full bore. Even today the gardens are beautifully maintained. And yet you can see some failings that the king would not have had to allow, but it's just a matter of economics. They probably need to now. Now the irony is that before the revolution, peasants were allowed here, as long as they conformed to the etiquette apparently, whatever that was. Whether that was a rule, but in fact never followed because they could never achieve the etiquette level, I don't know. But what if you assume that they knew about all this? How does that justify its 70-year reign? Restaurant and toilets. Neat. How fast can I run, I ask? But anyway, here's this. That does look familiar to me. A mask perhaps illustrating the games and dances and events that occurred here. And the army of laborers required to keep these grounds in the perfection the king would have required. Interesting to look at this and wonder if those are repairs that were necessitated and why. And maybe it reflects a goddess, but maybe it just reflects the dedication to pleasure here. This is the Apollo basin and the Apollo fountain. But this is to reflect the man, I'm sure it's Louis XIV is supposed to reflect, but it's to reflect this God-man. If the fountains were on, as though he were coming out of the mists of creation. You can see there a pipe running there, and there's one you can see an outline over there that would be feeding these fountains. And originally the fountains were fed by gravity of water from the Seine that was channeled down this way. And then as you reduce the diameter of the pipes, the pressure increases within those pipes and you get the fountain. You wonder what these scary looking fish were supposed to represent. Okay, where we are right now is just to the right of the Apollo fountain where my thumb is. And we're going to go off into these areas here, which one was the Queen's Hamlet, one is the Petite Trianon, how you pronounce it, and the other is the Grand Trianon. Here you can see what almost looks like bone surgery. Please. Two interesting symbols, the snake and then the lyre or lyre. Cleopatra. Was it Mark Antony who would ask, looking at the statue of Cleopatra, which was the snake? This is one of the boulevards. I think it's the one that's perpendicular to the right of the beginning of the Grand Canal that goes ultimately to the Grand Trianon. But it's a pretty walkway, and it would have been a pretty place to take a carriage or have your whatever those things were those guys rode around in, one or two man something or other. I wonder if that too would have been an original bridge as well as a conduit for the water in there. Now I think that we're on the pathway, the diagonals, the first diagonal has the dotted line on it. I just came up that first road that angles back off the perpendicular one. It probably was as elegant, but it was not maintained in deference to the other one. You can still see that this was laid out initially, the trees here. Wrong on where I was. I'm back at the canal again. This is probably the end of the cross part near the Grand Trianon. So I'll go in through the right here and see if I can find this. This is the Grand Trianon.
Abandoned during the French Revolution, the Trianon was next occupied by the Emperor Napoleon.
all with its own fountains. Just one of the flower beds here. This would be the boudoir of the king's wife. I don't think kings had boudoirs. This was probably the grand room of all the rooms here. I'm just guessing. More ornate. The mirrors, of course, would have been a tremendous addition, and validates my friend Bill Haynes put in the mirrors in his living room to make it look larger. And this large double room was the Queen's bedroom. Notice the similarity between her bedroom, her bed, and an altar, and the altar railing. Don't know whether any of this was ever gilded. This apparently served as a chapel. Yeah, Salon de la Chapelle. Perhaps all of the really elegant, I'm sure it was elegant, altar had been ripped out over time. This was the antechamber, whatever that means. But what's magnificent here is this spectacular round table. These look to have lion paws and then a serpent's tail end section. You can see it better there. And it looks like an auxiliary wing at the bottom. What I'm going to see now is the apartments of the emperor, and I'm going to go through this pretty fast, reacting only to those things that I see that look interesting, like this magnificent pool table. Although this was the salon of music. Again, it would be interesting to know if these sculptures were plated or gilded, or if these are even originals. Whether this is all original or not, I don't know. But he had a little bit flashier rooms than his wife. The problem is you can't tell what anybody had because I'm not sure what's real, what's not. It's interesting, these made out of macrolite. And where was it? I think in Russia that we saw urns of macrolite. It'd be interesting to know if there's any connection as to their source. Well, it does say macrolite de Siberia. So probably there was something here. Don't know what this giant room was. Could have been a train station, at least for one or two trains. Could be for dances, could be for dinner for the king and his 100 closest friends. Again, not the same elaborateness as before, but look at, there were chandeliers at all of these points where you see an eye bolt hanging down, probably because it was all done with candles. It looks like I've stumbled onto a little bit of a maze as we approach the Petite Trianon. Being the ultimate coward and adventurer, I will immediately take the first left that circles around back where I came. I will not take that right. Oh, voila. All of this is the Petite Trianon. I think there's a door going somewhere. My guess is I have to take my ticket in through there to see the innards. So off I go, and this time quickly. I'm going to end this tape right here and start again with the same shot. This was a little carriage for the Dauphine. Thanks. Notice how this was a secondary handle that could be lifted up to activate the lock, apparently, as well as the handle there. Look at the hooks on the fireplace designed to hold something. And the kind of frolicking, lighthearted casting design on the inside. This room's spiffed up a little bit more. Beautiful mirrors. But really more of the same. Apparently the Queen's Hamlet is down there, but on the left side, but I don't want to walk all the way down there. So I'll take their word for it. But opposite that is a pretty pastoral area, which looks like it would be part of Versailles for those trees over there that are manicured. Behind me is the Grand Trianon, and this is the walkway back to the main front of the palace, I believe. But a very pretty place. Would have been a pretty place in those days as well, of course. Or more so. But it's pretty now. Here's another one of the grand driveways. You can see the double rows of trees. That would have been right where I took the video of the map. So it's right at the end of the Grand Canal, closest to the palace. Way in the distance down this pretty walkway, you can see the entrance to the Grand Trianon. Pretty little statue out of the way, and most people never see it. Not that that's a big deal, but a bunch of nymphs or whatever you call those little buddies playing, frolicking. Looks like this one's lying on top of a fountain, balancing himself. This one bouncing on his bum on a fountain. I think this must symbolize seaweed down there. Don't know who the goddess is. And a final pan around those first gardens. Up the grand stairs. Up to the palace. This shot gives us a better view of the room of mirrors from the outside, as well as the fountains. And one of the purposes of the room of mirrors was to reflect the fountains and the landscaping, Grand Canal, etc. behind me. There, of course, the right side that's being restored now. Here it looks like they're going to restore some buildings, or certainly some kind of structures on top of the older existing structures, which is interesting. It'll be interesting to see what it is sometime in the future. Interesting, there are lots of people going in, as you can see as I pan around. And yet, it's now 3 o'clock. I've been here more than 6 hours, 6:15 really. I've been inside the premises more than 6 hours. To give you a clue of how many are inside, these are just the buses. And this is not the major number that'll be here in the next 2 months each day. And this road, if it looks similar to what we saw inside the palace, it probably is. The road went all the way to Paris. Whether it was tree-lined like this all the way to Paris is a very good question.